Before we start this video, a large thank you to Vincenzio, Jason C., Peter, Kenneth, and Ahmed for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope I pronounced your names right. Hello guys, and today we're going to be adding a soul count to our enemies, and when we kill our enemy, we'll actually be awarded the souls that the enemy drops to our player. We'll also put a little thing on the UI to update that, so let's hit the 2D button here. Let's go click Player UI, and let's open that drop down and see what we have here. It's been a while since we touched our UI actually. Okay, so I'm going to right click, create an empty game object, and then I'm going to go up here and alt click on this bottom right to make it the size of the screen. And then I'm going to rename this. You can just call it soul count or whatever, something like that, something similar. Experience points, etc., etc. And I'm going to right click under this new soul count game object. I'm going to make an image, and this will serve as the background or backdrop for the actual number. So I'm just going to make it a small little rectangle. I'm going to clamp it to the bottom right side of the screen here, and then drag it down like so. And just to keep the consistency of our UI, I'm going to double click until I get this game object, and I'm going to actually copy the color of our weapon slots and spell slots. And I can see the alpha's at 215. I'm just going to copy the color here and drop that in here like so. Set that to 215. Okay. And lastly, I'm going to right click on this now, and I'm going to actually create a UI text element. And I'm going to hit here and make that the same size as the object by hitting Alt and clicking. I'm going to keep it normal. I'm going to make the text white so it stands out a lot more. And I'm actually going to put that in the center like that, and I'm going to make it defaultly set to 0. And actually, I'm going to clamp it to the left or right side here, and I'm going to drag it in just a little bit so it's not touching the edges. And that looks great. Okay, so this will be updated in the future to tell us how many souls we have on our player right now. Alright, now let's move on to the next step. Let's open up our player's game object here and go to the player stats script. Let's double click that and open it up. Now you can add this on the player stats, or you can go back to the character stats if you'd like, if you want to give all characters in your game a soul count. I'm just going to do it on the character stats because it's where we keep most of our other stats now, and I want to keep it consistent. So down below focus points, I'm just going to say public int, and I'm going to call this soul count. You can call it experience points, whatever you have it called in your game. I'm going to initialize that at 0 because we start the game with 0. And now over on our player stats script, I'm actually going to make a function to add to that counter. So let's say public void, and I'm just going to call it add souls. And then we're going to open up the brackets here. I'm going to say we need to pass an int, and the int will be how many souls we are adding. And then the function is very simple. It's just soul count equals soul count plus souls. The souls are passing through when we call this function. So that is very straightforward. And now we actually have to call this somewhere. We have to call it when our enemy is being killed. And now in Dark Souls, when an enemy dies, every player in the game who is not on the enemy's team, quote unquote, is awarded souls. So we're going to do a simpler version of that right now because we only have one player. So here on the take damage function on the enemy stat script, we're going to make the handle enemy death rather function. So just right below that, let's make a private void. I'm going to call it handle death. Now we can copy all this right here. That's inside the if current health is less than or equal to 0. We're just going to take all this and we're going to paste it inside the handle death function. Okay, cool. Now we can just call handle death in here instead. And now in here, let's get rid of that. We're actually going to create a functionality to add souls. So on the enemy stats up here, we're just going to say public int souls awarded. We can say 4. Not it's a bit long. We'll just say souls awarded on death. So pretty straightforward. You should know what this means by the name. And I'm just gonna initialize it at 50 for the demonstration purposes of this video. You can put it at whatever you'd like. Obviously, different enemies will give different soul counts for their rewards when they're killed. And then down here, what we would say in pseudocode is scan for every player in the scene and award them souls. But since we only have one player right now, we're just going to set this up for one player. But the logic is identical for multiple players, except you'd use something like a for each loop. So it's straightforward. If you've already went ahead and added some multiplayer aspects to your game, you can set this up for more than one player. But right now, I'm just going to say player stats, a player stats variable, and we're going to call it player stats. And then we're going to say equals find object of type. Now, you could do this by searching for the player who damaged this enemy, but again, because in Dark Souls it scans the whole scene for players to award souls to, it's actually best to use find object of type. So we're going to say if player stats does not equal null, we're going to say player stats dot add souls, and then we're going to say souls awarded on death, and it's just that easy. But now let's take it a step further, because right now, if we go into the game, as you can see my soul count. I'm going to hit this guy until he's dead, and then you'll see, boom, I'm awarded 50 souls. And that's all well and good, but it happens the second he's dead. In Dark Souls, there's kind of a bit of a delay, okay? So you can do this a bunch of different ways. You can use an enumerator and give it a delay. What we're going to do is use an animation event because I love those. So here on the enemy animator manager, we're going to make a public void. It has to be public so we can call it on the animation event. We're going to call it award souls on death, okay? And let's actually put that above the animator move. There we go, just like that. Now, coming back into the enemy stats, we can actually copy the logic we have thus far and paste it in here. So this whole thing right now, if player stats does not equal null, including the player stats variables, copy that. Let's paste that in here. And let's say enemy stats dot souls awarded on death, because we already called that on this enemy animator manager. And there we go. And now we just call this on an animation event, and we're good to go. But before we do that, we're actually going to go back now and replace the animator variable here with the enemy animator manager, because back in the early days of the series, we used an animator instead of the enemy animator manager to play our animations because we didn't have one developed yet. So let's go and just basically call the enemy animator manager. It's get component in children because it sits below the game object on this one. And then we're just going to replace animator.play with enemy animator manager.play target animation. And we're going to put comma true after damage 01 and death because we want to lock them into this animation so they are interacting. And we're just doing this so we can use our enemy animator manager in the future and not the animator because we have it set up a lot better. So you can actually find where this is called here. Now I think it's only in one more place. Yes. And after we replace this, we're just going to get rid of the animator variable. We don't need it on this script currently at the moment. Okay, so play target animation, dead 01, comma true. And let's erase that. And erase that here. And we're good to go. Okay, so now let's go into Unity and let's check out the scene view real quick. I mean the animator window, but first, let's save this. Alright, so let's click on our enemy. Make sure you're clicking on the model, the thing with the enemy animator manager script and the animator component. Then go up to window and click animation. I'm going to drag in the animation window because it came over here on my second monitor. Just give me a second. There we go. Now I'm going to look for the dead animation. Make sure you do this with all of your death animations. So each death animation, go over. Oh, Unity's being stubborn. And now find where you want to place it. Right here. There you go. And then right click and click award souls on death. And now you can do this to the player too. You can make an award souls on death function. That way when the player plays these death animations, you won't get an error in the console. And if you're playing multiplayer, other people can collect souls too if the player dies. We won't touch that right now. That's in a future multiplayer video. But if we actually attack this enemy right now, you can watch my soul count down there. So we'll kill him. And I haven't got any souls yet. And then boom, 50. Perfect. All right, excellent. Now we have one last thing to do. We actually just want to update the UI component as well to display an accurate count of what we have. So we could do this a bunch of ways. We could add it to the UI manager, but I want to keep that as clean as possible and not so cluttered. We actually have individual scripts for our health and stamina, etc., etc. So we're going to do something similar to that. We're going to go down to soul count, and we're going to add a script. I'm just going to call it soul count bar. You can call it soul count UI, whatever you'd like to call it, as long as you know what it is. I'm going to go up here and say using UnityEngine.ui. And then down here, I'm going to say namespace, SG, as is per tradition. And I'm going to erase the start and update methods. We're going to say public text. And then we're going to call this, what's really descriptive? We'll just call it soul count. Yeah, just soul count's fine. And we're going to add a public int. We're going to call this soul count number. Actually, we should call it soul count text. Cool. Okay, now down here, we can actually just say public void set soul count text. Actually, we can even make this more simple. We can erase this and just keep the text. And then we can pass an int for soul count. And then we can say soul count text dot text is equal to soul count dot to string. Then we end that with the function with the brackets. There we go. And that will just basically translate the number into a string for us and put that number into our text box. So now we actually have to drag in the text box because I made it public and didn't call onAwaken start method. So let's drag in the text there, and that's good to go. And now the last thing we have to do in this video is update that number on our enemy's death event. So let's head back into the enemy animator manager script where we made that function for awarding souls on death, and let's go and expand that a little further. So we're actually going to want to look for a souls count bar variable. So we're going to use find object of type. And again, if you had multiple players in the scene, you would just use a for each soul count bar do X logic. So just using a for each loop here. But we only have one right now, so let's worry about that. So we're going to say if soul count bar does not equal null, what we want to do is say soul count bar dot, what do we call it again? Set soul count text. And we pass the player stats dot current souls, which will be our soul count. And we actually need the player stats variable for this, so we're going to put this, we're going to copy it and place it under here that says if player stats does not equal null, otherwise you might get an error. And there we go. That looks good. Let's save that. Very simple and straightforward indeed. Now let's go into the game here for our final test of the video, hopefully. Start it up. Let's kill this gentleman. Alright, as you can see here, I've killed him, and there's a delay. And boom, our soul count updates with the souls we have on our character. Excellent, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to drop a like and leave a comment. It helps appease the YouTube algorithm gods, helps other people see my series, and helps me out. So if you're feeling super generous, check out my Patreon below. And I will see you guys in the next video where we're going to start parry and riposting. So be excited for that.